So dear devotees, thank you so much. Our friends are here and we're so grateful and we're so excited. And this is such a beautiful verse because it's speaking about, of course, Lord Ramachandra, who all of us are aware that the Supreme Lord, expanded from the Vishnu form, has entered into what we think is the material arena. We all know that the Lord actually is he's not cannot be, we cannot really think of the Lord as really being material or entering, even though he's taken a human form. He's not material, and he really isn't really entering into these material realms as we understand it. This is simply a lila, it's simply a pastime, because Krishna is always covered by his yoga maya potency. And so therefore, Krishna doesn't really enter into Mahamaya, not really. However, in order for us to learn some lessons, those of us that are here in this material realm, for us to understand some things about supremacy and about authority, then the Lord performed these different pastimes to help us to understand. So it's really important for us to realize that we are trying to understand some pastimes that they're really not, cannot be understood really with our material minds. Not really. We can pray. We can pray to enter into the pastimes, which is what Ekavira Prabhu and I have been doing for the last 24 hours. Is when we learned we were going to do the class today. We're like, okay, let's stop praying. Let's stop praying because we understand, absolutely understand that we are often absorbed in Krishna's external energy, and therefore entering into Krishna's internal energy. It's not, we cannot do that on our own. We need the grace and the mercy, right, of the Lord's devotees, and we also need the grace and the mercy of the Supreme Lord himself. So here we are with Lord Ramachandra, whose lotus feet are worshipped by Brahma and Shiva. So that's important. That's important to know, because that helps us to understand and put Lord Ramachandra in perspective. Because when we think about Brahma, the first created being, and we think about Shiva, who is not really, Prabhupada explains, Srila Prabhupada tells us that Lord Shiva is not really a part of this Mahatattva either. He's not a part of this material energy. I mean, Prabhupada gives many description of who Lord Shiva is. However, what's important in this pastime is for us to understand that both Lord Shiva and Brahma, who are really great personalities, that they themselves are worshiping the Supreme Lord. They are worshiping Lord Ramachandra, which when we think about it, Lord Shiva, he has so many followers. He has all these different personalities that we could say are serving him. And many people are very confused about Lord Shiva and who he is in relationship to the Lord. Many people worship Lord Shiva thinking that Lord Shiva is actually God, right? Like they worship Lord Shiva in that mood. And I did for many, many years before. I share this all the time. Before I became introduced to Bhakti, I actually did think Lord Shiva was God, and I did think that I was preparing myself to go to Kailash to be with him and his devotees. So it's not, so even in this life, I have experienced that. So I understand absolutely how many people on this planet can think that Lord Shiva is the absolute truth or the absolute personality. However, here, Srila Prabhupada is immediately letting us know in this verse, is bringing it to our attention, that Lord Ramachandra is worshipped by these great personalities. So if there's doubts in anyone's mind about the position of Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, then as we read Bhagavatam, we get clarity about, their roles and who they are. And so it's interesting to me how in this part of Srimad Bhagavatam, that we have this Ramayan, right? And kind of smack like almost to the end before we get to the 10th canto and start getting into, Krishna's pastimes. We have this human form of the Lord to kind of gently, because once we get into the 10th canto, it's a whole other world. So here we get an opportunity to really gently try to understand who the Lord is and the greatness of the Lord. And we learn that Lord Ramachandra came in the mood of an ordinary human being. I listened haven't finished listening. However, I was listening a little bit to Kripamoya Prabhu's class. And I love his classes because he's so precise, and he's like a historian. He gives you all these little details. He goes into little creeks, I call them, like little creeks, and he pulls up all the little pebbles and he explains them. And so he really explains so nicely about who Lord Ram is and this mood that Lord Ram came in as a human being. And so as we explore this pastime, which Ekavira Prabhu is going to do most of the exploration. I'm so excited because the last time Ekavira Prabhu wasn't able to be here with us. And so this time, his schedule is arranged in such a way that he can grace us with his presence.
Right. I'm excited to be here.
And so, yeah, one of the points that we really want to focus on is one of course, Ram's servant, Jatayu, and understanding the mood of a person that's playing a role of a devotee, and playing a role of a devotee that is not even in a human body, and what that looks like. What is that? What kind of relationship that they have, and how can we learn from this relationship with Jatayu, this vulture, this bird, and Lord Ramachandra in this particular part of the pastime? And so Ekavira Prabhu is going to share with us some of the things about Jatayu that will enliven us as devotees. Ekavira?
Jatayu. Again, Hare Krishna devotees, it's so wonderful to be here after Vraja Lila. So Jatayu, this particular pastime, and Jatayu as a personality is quite relevant for us as aspiring devotees and devotees, because Jatayu, he actually manifested many different qualities in his service when he saw Ravana trying to take Maya Sita from Ram. He displayed qualities of determination, acting without hesitation, conviction, and fearlessness. And this is something that, as followers of Abhay Charan, Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, we hear about the qualities of Srila Prabhupada, fearlessness, and we hear of the things that he has done and engaging in devotional service, showing absolutely no fear. And so in this particular pastime, Jatayu, of course, being, as Vraja Lila expressed, in the bird's body, and Ravana, it's an extremely powerful demon. I mean, he had 10 heads and so many different arms manifesting. It's explained that by the benediction of Lord Brahma, he was given the power to not be conquered by anyone in the three worlds. He had this arrogance, though. He didn't fear those in the human form. And of course, Ramachandra appeared in this particular human form. It's expressed that Ravana was so strong that he lifted Mount Kailash with Lord Shiva on it at one point in time. And so here, this personality who has Sita and Jatayu in the bird's body, he sees him, but he has to do something because he is the sold out servant of Lord Ramachandra and Sita Devi. And so he endeavors to actually fight Ravana, even though he understood that he really didn't have the potency to actually fight Ravana, but he still was going to fight. And what can we learn from this? Well, Krishna expresses in the Bhagavad Gita that in the second chapter, that you have the right to perform your prescribed duties when he's speaking to Arjuna, but you're not entitled to the fruits of action. And so Srila Prabhupada explains in that purport that everyone has that proprietary right in regard to prescribed duties, but we should act without attachment to those particular results. And such disinterested obligatory duties doubtlessly leads one to the path of liberation. And so he also expressed, and we know the pastime, Arjuna was therefore advised by Krishna to actually engage in the fight in a matter of duty without attachment to the results. And this is the example that Jatayu exhibited. He was an example of engaging in a particular duty, a service with full heart and dedication and devotion without the attachment to the results of this, all for the pleasure of his Lord, Ram and Sita. And he would fight for Ram and Sita until his last breath. And so when we look at these two different personalities, Arjuna on the battle of Kurukshetra, and then Jatayu fighting directly with Ravana. What was the result materially and spiritually from the different perspectives? Well, we see that, Arjuna engaged in the battle, and from the material perspective, he won the battle, and he wasn't defeated. And from Jatayu, in his particular pastime, we see that he was actually defeated. But however, they both were victorious. And why were they both victorious? Because they both did the actual duty of all living beings, and that's to please the Lord. And so they were completely victorious in this particular aspect. Samsiddhya Haritoshana. The duty of everyone is to actually please the Lord. And whatever we do, whatever activities we engage in, it's all to be done for the pleasure of the Lord. And so Bhakti Vinod Thakur, I remember he expresses in one of the prayers, this in Hari, anyway, I can't remember right offhand, but he expresses in one of the prayers, living in the world for Krishna's pleasure, living in the world for Krishna's pleasure. And he's telling us that, if we can actually manifest this consciousness, the state of consciousness, then we can live in the mood with no loss, or as Krishna says, no loss of diminution. And he expresses that again in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. In this endeavor, there's no loss or diminution. And a little advancement on this path can save one from the most dangerous type of fear. And so this is a relevant verse for one of the many different qualities that Jatayu actually displayed in this particular pastime, this aspect of fear. And fear, fear. My old friend, fear.
What are some areas you're not supposed to be fearful, Ekavira. You're in a male's body.
And so how many of us experience this particular emotion of fear? How many of us actually experience this particular emotion? And fear is not only a discouraging emotion, it can be an absolutely crippling emotion that can discourage us from even endeavoring. And this is the aspect that we learn from Jatayu, the endeavor. We must endeavor. And Jatayu was fearless and acted without the hesitation, as we expressed. And so fearlessness when I think of fearlessness, I think of course, there are different pastimes that we can reflect on. Of course, this one is one. But I also think of things that are personalities in our midst that, you know, display these qualities that we can actually learn from. We can be inspired by. We can, by speaking about them, be encouraged by those characteristics. And again, Bhaktivinoda Thakur expresses that when we actually express an appreciative mood about the qualities of the devotees, we then take on some of those qualities by expressing them. And so there's one particular devotee who we've had the great pleasure to serve with for many years, and that's Bali Maharaj. And I recall he's a servant here in Gita Nagari. He's actually been the Pujari, Gaur Nitai Gaur Sundar's Pujari for about 24 years, going on 24 years. And before that, he was a servant of the cows and he cooked. And so when he was in Washington, D.C., he used to drive an ice cream truck. And in off hours, he would sometimes take Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj around Washington, D.C. in this ice cream truck. And so one day, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was riding with Bali, and Bali is a very simple and unassuming devotee. And so Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj noticed some holes in the windshield, and he said, "What's this, Bali?" And Bali's driving. He said, "Oh, no, those are bullet holes." And he said, "Bullet holes? Where did they come from? What happened?" And he said, "Oh, somebody shot at me the other day." And he said, "Someone shot at you? What happened?" And he said, "Well, I was chanting and I pulled up to stop to sell ice cream, and somebody pulled a gun out on me." And Maharaj said, "What did you do?" He said, "I just kept chanting and I ignored him." And he said, "You ignored him?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "You ignored him? What are you talking about? You ignored him." He said, "Well, you told me that if Krishna wants to harm you, who could harm you? If Krishna wants you harm, who can harm you? And if Krishna wants to hurt you, who can save you?" And he said, "And that's what you told me." And said, and I was chanting. And he said, "Oh, Bali, you didn't even say anything to us about that." He said, "Yeah." He said, "But the bullet holes, how did they come in the window?" He said, "Well, I guess the guy got a little upset and he put the gun away and he walked down the street, and then he turned around and he just started shooting into the truck." And he said, "Well, what did you," about Tirtha Maharaj asked, "What did you do?" He said, "I just got behind the wheel and I drove down the street and I kept selling ice cream." Like, what? Bali Maharaj. And then there's this other devotee also. It's like, he's also a very simple and unassuming devotee. His Grace, what's his name? Sharba Prabhu. He's a Pujari in Potomac. And he's originally from Croatia. And during his life in Croatia, there was this civil war, Croatia, Bosnia, and Serbia. And I remember Vraja Lila and I, when we were there with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, traveling through the countryside of Croatia and Bosnia. And you could see the remnants of the civil war. I mean, most of the buildings are built of mortar, concrete, and they were completely destroyed or half destroyed, or you see these huge bullet holes where the high caliber bullets were used to penetrate the concrete. And the people, you can feel the tension among the persons in the region. And in this particular case, Sharba Prabhu was actually in a village, and And those soldiers from Bosnia had captured this village. And that this was a point in time of the war in which when they captured a village, they would just kill all the men in the village. And eventually they would kill most of the women also. And so it was recommended to stay inside, and hopefully other soldiers would come and defend that particular village. And this devotee was planning on going to the capital of Croatia to actually distribute books. And so he had his backpack and then a change of clothes. And so he was chanting, and as he explained it, he was chanting some of the most intense rounds that he ever chanted. And then he said, well, I was going to distribute books. I'm going to distribute books. And so he started walking down the road, and the soldiers captured him. And they took him inside and they started, interrogating him. And he wasn't responding to their question, and he continued to chant. And so they called for the commanding officer, and he still continued to chant. And they eventually decided they were just going to take him outside and assassinate him. And then the commanding officer came as soon as they made this decision to assassinate him. And so the commanding officer asked what was going on, and he got the details, and then he started inquiring. And as Sharaba Prabhu was chanting, he was chanting, the commanding officer said, he's a spiritual person, let him go. Let him go. And so the other soldiers, they let him go. But then one of them was so angry, he just opened fire on him as he was walking down the road. Still, he had his backpack on, and he just sprayed with his machine gun. And when he sprayed the machine gun across the road, he knew that he had to hit him, but Sharaba Prabhu just kept walking. And the soldier was just boggled. His mind was boggled. And he just jumped in his vehicle. And he just, ran away because he was afraid. He didn't understand what happened. So when Sharaba Prabhu got into the capital of Croatia, he sat down and he looked at the backpack, and there was a bullet hole in the backpack. And as he opened the backpack, he unzipped it and he pulled out the Bhagavad Gita, which took the bullet, had the bullet in it. And so just as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu protected Haridas Thakur while chanting the holy names, and Haridas Thakur did not feel the pain that was inflicted upon him in the 52 marketplaces, Sharaba Prabhu was protected by Krishna in the form of Bhagavad Gita, which took the bullet for him and protected his back. And so these particular devotees, they're just like exemplary. And there's so many others in Russia and so many others that we can consider. However, what about those of us who still, have this little personality that sometimes manifests this fear? Well, there's little things that, is sometimes recommended that we can do to develop these qualities of these great personalities. And I remember speaking to someone that exemplified fearlessness, and they expressed, well, I have fear all the time. I just, do my service anyway. And it reminded me of this statement that someone wrote a book, Feel the Fear, but Do It Anyway. And then there's another personality that recommends it, fear, when one actually has fear. Fear, the body doesn't recognize the difference between fear and excitement. It's the same physiological response in the body between these two different emotions. And so therefore, if we could somehow engage, there's a whole methods that they go through, which I won't go into it this time. But if we can actually, as Mother Colleen used to say here, change the channel, when we feel these particular emotions, what happens? Emotions, the stomach tightens up. We get the chest, we can feel the heartbeat, we may sweat profusely. We may even shake. Well, this is the same feeling that we have when we're fearful as when we are excited. And so therefore they recommend that, okay, speak to the mind and change this, reframe this particular feeling. And when this feeling comes about, this is a signal. This is not fear. This is a signal that I'm excited. I'm excited. And then when we change the channel and look at this particular emotion as excitement, then that change the paradigm, and we aren't crippled. And then I'd like to add another feature, because this is something that helps me tremendously. Because one of the challenges that I've had throughout my entire life, I'm basically a really introverted person. So speaking in public has been, a major challenge in my life. And what to speak of, when Guru Maharaj gave me an instruction to, go and chant for the devotees, learn how to play harmonium and chant, do kirtan for the devotees, focus on Sri Nam Prabhu, the holy name. And so in the humble attempt to do that, this fear would come and my stomach, would tighten up. Even this morning when we got ready to sit down here, my stomach started growling. I said, oh boy, here we go again. Here it is. But this time we understand, we're excited, and we add another feature. We turn to Krishna and Guru. We turn to Krishna and Guru. So there's a signal for us to actually understand that we are only instruments in the hands of the Lord. And so when we feel this particular emotion, turn to Krishna and pray to Krishna, pray to our spiritual masters, pray to Vaishnava acharyas, and that they will use us in some way and somehow, first of all, to purify our hearts, to help us to realize that which we're actually being used to actually share. And then if someone else benefits from that which we share, then it's all the more wonderful. And so Srila Prabhupada, I remember one great servant of Srila Prabhupada, His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He asked Srila Prabhupada, he said, what's the difference between you and us, Srila Prabhupada? And Srila Prabhupada said, well, the difference between you and me is that you can fall down and I will never fall down. And so that evening, His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj went by Srila Prabhupada's room and he saw Srila Prabhupada in the room. And Srila Prabhupada was on his knees and he was praying. He said, please, Krishna, please never let me fall down. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj was shocked. He said, wait a minute. And so when he had the opportunity, he asked Srila Prabhupada, he said, Srila Prabhupada, earlier today you said you will never fall down. But then I heard you praying, asking Krishna to never let you fall down. And Srila Prabhupada turned to him and said, now you know why I will never fall down. Because Prabhupada was always turning to Krishna. And so those great devotees, those persons that are like Jatayu, who exemplify this particular quality, they always think of the Lord. They're always calling upon the Lord. They're always praying to the Lord. Their life and soul is the Lord. And so therefore, and the same thing with Srila Prabhupada, he was exemplifying this quality. He saw Tamal Krishna Maharaj behind him, looking at him, praying to Krishna. But even if he didn't see him, he was actually being used as an instruction for all of us to understand what the actual key is to overcome this fearfulness. And that's to always understand that we are none but instruments of the Lord. And that's the mood in which Jatayu actually displayed. And so therefore, we can see when this particular feeling comes up, instead of it being a crippling feeling, we can see it as, a means to actually turn to the Lord and then pray to the Lord and look at it as an adventure. What is it that the Lord is going to actually display before us now? What is going to be, what's going to take place? We can develop this genuine excitement and be spiritual seekers, and just looking for, as Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj used to say, look for the Krishna magic. Because of fear, I mean, basically, can be crippling, but it's also that we have a desire to have a particular result. We desire to have a particular result. And so Krishna is informing us, forget about the result. Just do the service for my pleasure, thinking of me and for my pleasure. And this is something that Jatayu actually displayed so much of. Ramachandra, within Lord Ramachandra, displaying his pleasure of Jatayu's endeavor, just his endeavor, not his success in defeating Ravana, his endeavor in trying to fight for on Lord Ramachandra's behalf. He was so pleased that he actually performed the funeral rites of Jatayu. And they say Jatayu was a bird. He was a bird, and Ramachandra is performing the funeral rites for him. And Lord Ramachandra expresses to Lakshman, and I'll read this particular quote. Lord Ramachandra is actually, he's speaking to Jatayu just before he departs. And he's also sharing with Lakshman that today I'll perform your funeral rites. I will do so as a son does for his father. And when he did the funeral rites, like a loving son, Lord Ram told Lakshman, my dear brother, today is the most painful day of my life, not because Sita Mata has left, but because of the death of Jatayu. A great service has been rendered by my most dear devotee. Jatayu's death has pained me more than separation of Sita. And this is the mood of the Lord, just by this humble endeavor, even though he wasn't successful in defeating Ravana, just by this endeavor, Lord Ramachandra was pleased. So we understand again, in this endeavor, there is no loss of diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Jatayu was a great devotee, and his glories are being sung for years and years to encourage us to remember the Lord by calling on his holy names, and to remember the Patita Pavan aspect or quality of the Lord, and who appreciates and is pleased by the intense and seemingly insignificant, humble, sincere endeavor. And that's Jatayu.
Wow, thank you, Ekavira. That's amazing. So beautiful how you shared about this fearlessness. And I was joking about how we have this quote unquote belief that in the male's body, you're not supposed to have so much fear. However, we can see just by this pastime that, fearlessness, becoming fearless really it's a privilege for someone that is dedicated to the Supreme Lord. That's the gift that's given to a devotee of the Lord. A devotee of the Lord is fearless, whether they're in a male's body or a female's body or a bird's body, because of that connection with the Supreme Personality of the Lord. And sometimes I know for myself, I sometimes think, wow, I'm so far away from having this understanding, even of Jatayu. I hear Jatayu dedication. I hear how, he, as a bird, in this bird's body, that he was old and he he just had this amazing devotion to Lord Ram, that when he saw Ravana coming to take Sita, and he saw that Sita was being captured, he just couldn't take it. It's like, how can you take something that belongs to the Lord? How can you do that? So even if in a material sense you could think, well, he's so old, what is he going to do? Ravana, he's this amazing personality with his 10 heads and his 10 arms or whatever, and he's so strong. We would think normally he could have just said, you know what, Ram will take care of this. Ram is God. It's not that he didn't have an understanding of who Ram was. However, again, as Ekavira Prabhu was sharing about this fearlessness, Jatayu just immediately got all this, what we would call in a material sense, adrenaline, right? In a material sense, we would say he just got all this adrenaline, even in his old body. And he said, no, you cannot take something that belongs to the Lord. You cannot do this. And so Jatayu, he was able to fight Lord Ram with whatever strength that he could have. And we see in the pastime that Ram himself said to Jatayu, he said, you didn't lose. No, you didn't lose. Even though Ravana, it's explained that, Ravana was able to defeat Jatayu and they fought. They really, really fought. However, Ram explained to Jatayu, no, you didn't lose to Ravana, not really, because you're my devotee. You're my devotee. And we hear in the Nectar of Devotion that anyone that engage in devotional service without motivation, that person actually is given great benediction from the Supreme Lord. And so here we see with as Ekavira Prabhu is sharing about the Chayu, this bird, this vulture, how even though he understood, it's because remember, this is a Leela, it's a pastime. So Jatayu is a great personality, really. He's not really a bird. I mean, he is a bird, but he's not a bird. A chincha beta beta tatwa. He is and he's not. And so although for us, for our sake, the Lord descends so that we can enter into this pastime, so that we can understand what's possible, and we can understand the impartiality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Ram was so impartial, right? Because here's this vulture, he's a bird. And sometimes we kind of think, at least sometimes I think, is Krishna really seeing, is he really hearing that I'm trying to chant? Is Krishna really, is he really here? Is he really seeing that I'm really, in this old body that I have, trying to do some little bit of austerity? Is Krishna really seeing? Sometimes in the mind can go into places, where we, at least myself, I might sometimes think, oh, Krishna, are you really there? Is this really, are we really having some connection? And then we see how in this pastime, how Lord Ram shows us, yes, I'm always there. I'm always there. I'm always available. And not only am I there for you in a human body, I'm there for every living entity on that's in the universe. The Lord is making himself available. And I think it's in the Bhagavad Gita. I think it's the 9th chapter. It might be text 2, where the Lord is explaining about this impartiality, right? That he doesn't really, Krishna, Lord Ram, it's not that he's just thinking about, one species of life. No, the Lord is there for everyone. I'm just seeing Andrea and her sweet living entity, right? And knowing that she's a devotee. So Krishna is there with her and with her living entity that she has. I couldn't recognize if it was a dog or a cat. So that's why I'm saying a living entity. So I know it's one of those personalities. And so the other point that Ekavira Prabhu talked about is how Lord Ram, he was so indebted. He was so indebted. And that is the reciprocation that Krishna, he reciprocates with us every little step that we take. Even when we're not doing whatever we think in terms of on the bhakti path, we may sometimes think, oh, am I really doing this properly? Or, am I really, what am I really doing, Krishna? Each day can be a day of challenge on the bhakti path. I know for me, every day is a day that I'm really have to face, my different anarthas every day and say, Krishna, please, Krishna. But Krishna is always available and Krishna is always there. And this is the mood of Ram. Ram is the Supreme Lord. So Ram has come in this mood as a human being to help us to understand. I am here. I am here and I will always be here. And I'm showing you through this pastime. And I'm showing you how I'm so indebted that I myself will do the funeral rite for this bird. I'm showing you how who I am. I'm showing you my devotion to you as a devotee, as someone that's aspiring to be a devotee. I'm showing you. Here is Jatayu. He was aspired. He's this personality that loved Ram and trying to protect, Ram's property, and the Ram reciprocated with him by doing his funeral rites, his funeral ceremony. And sometimes I think my mind goes to, because in the material world, is such a reflection of what's real, and my only experience is what I know in this conditioned state. So when I think of how Ram himself performed this pastime, I think of what I've seen in this world, the kind of love that I've seen between God brothers, and when I saw personally saw how Radhanath Swami performed the funeral rites for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And I saw that love. I saw how Radhanath Swami body was just like, we thought he was going to leave his body because, he had spent 6 weeks, was it 6 weeks or more?
Yeah, 6 weeks.
6 weeks taking care of being every single day present for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, every single day. And then at the end, when everybody's ready to just be crushed because we're all physically exhausted, what to speak of emotionally exhausted. And Radhanath Swami, he as I said, he was so very present for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And yet at the end of all this, when it's time now to do the funeral rite, when everybody is just like, as I said, everybody's either caught in the emotion of sadness or physically exhausted or whatever was happening for each individual person, Radhanath Swami, he rose up and he did this amazing funeral rite that lasted maybe another extra 2 hours in our temple to show us what this love is, what this love means. So my experience in my material conditioning is what I have seen with my eyes in this physical body. So when I think of Lord Ram doing that for Jatayu, I just think this, yes, I can get a little glimpse of this. I got a little glimpse of this. And thank you, Ram, for being this example and being in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that I can somehow get this amazing privilege to read this pastime and been given the gift to get a little glimpse of this in my material conditioning. And so sometimes Krishna, my God, Lord, the Lord may seem far away. And as we know, Lord Ram, according to Shukadeva Goswami, he appeared in this human form simply to share the humanity, simply to connect us with the humanity of being in a world where there are many lessons to learn. And Ram himself was an example to help us to understand these lessons. And I think sometimes some of these personalities like Jatayu that shows this depth of devotional service, how will I ever achieve this, my Lord? How will this be possible in this material conditioning, this material body, this material mind? And then I reflect on the prayer of Rupa Goswami, one of the prayers of Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And this prayer, it says, what does it say? I don't know. I have this prayer somewhere. But anyway, basically, what this prayer is saying is that in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is that it's a hope against hope prayer. It's a hope against hope. And Rupa Goswami is explaining, I have no taste for hearing. I have no understanding of the scriptures. I'm even from a low birth, and I'm all of these things that, we may be thinking about. However, he says, however, I have hope against hope. I have hope that somehow you will embrace me. You will embrace me. And so we see this prayer of Rupa Goswami just exemplified in this mood of Lord Ram. He came as a human, and in his relationship with him and Jatayu, we see that the Lord has shown us that yes, he will embrace our devotion, even if we are in a bird consciousness, even if we think like maybe we're like birds, whatever consciousness we may be in, the Lord will be there. The Lord will be there for us. And as I said earlier, of course, Jatayu, this vulture, was not just an ordinary bird. He was not an ordinary bird. However, he appeared like an ordinary old bird. And there's so much beautiful pastime about him that we could possibly share in the future. Yeah, maybe Ekavira. I'm rambling now, so it's time to stop rambling. Ekavira, who?
So many wonderful pastimes, and we've gone over time.
We've gone over time, and so our sweet moderator is here.
Thank you so much for your patience and staying here with us.
Thank you so much for this wonderful class, Ekavira Prabhu and Vraja Lila Devi. Such wonderful points on inspiring us on fearlessness and such amazing stories. You were allowed to go overtime, so that's absolutely not a problem. I know darshan is on, and you guys wanted us to have all darshan, so I don't know if you want me to show you darshan now, or we can take questions, whatever you feel free.
Well, we're putting it back in your court, my love. We are simply your servants.
Yes.
You please decide whatever you would like to do. I see a hand up though.
Yes, please go ahead. You can take questions. That's absolutely fine.
Okay, let me just put my thing off here for a minute.
Hi, Krishna. Can you hear?
Hey, Haribol, Hari.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Oh my goodness, your engagement and passion for this pastime is infectious. Thank you both so much. I have a question, I think, particularly Ekavira Prabhu, you made this point about that sometimes our fear, I mean, for this vulture, the fear was, it was major, like, it was really clear the sort of imbalance of capability and power there, but sometimes our fear is also about attachment to the results. And I was wondering about some practical suggestions about how we begin to be less attached to the results.
Thank you for that question. And Vraja Lila can add to it also. One of the things that we expressed about, the most important thing is seeing it as a actual signal to take shelter of the Lord. And the Lord is our guide. And the Lord will actually utilize us in whatever way that the Lord wants to utilize us, just like in these two different pastimes that we spoke about, Arjuna and Jatayu. Different material results, but at the same time, they both were, victorious. And so the results, sometimes if we do introspection, we can see that the results personalities really want to please the Lord, and they wanted to offer the most or the best that they can actually offer. And that's a genuine sentiment. At the same time, if we go deeper, even if we think we may have that sentiment, we may consider that we want to look good. And that's something that is prominent of us who are fighting with the material energy in the conditioned state. And so overcoming the fears first, seeing it as that it is, just an emotion. And again, as we expressed, we talked about that, changing the channel, reframing the actual feeling. But then there's a step before that, and that's first the awareness of the feeling, and then actually turning to the Lord. And I personally, call on Krishna, or I think of the Vaishnava acharyas, or I think of my spiritual master if I don't have the time to offer an actual prayer. Because in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj expressed that just by thinking of the Vaishnava acharyas, we actually invoke their blessings. And so by doing that, we know that we are not alone in our particular endeavor. And so when we actually think of the Lord as devotees as step one, I think I can't remember her name, the psychologist that speaks, she speaks about the 5-second rule. You count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to change the mindset so we can move into the prefrontal lobe, and make the decision to actually understand that the results are not up to us. That's the first thing. So reflect upon the devotee of the Lord and call out to the Lord. And then the second step she referred to was actually the, awareness, prefrontal lobe. Do you remember that? The second step?
Now, I was thinking though, that's so important. And as you're finding the second step, I was getting a thought about the fact that oftentimes, we think that we're not supposed to be attached to results. Well, yeah, I mean, in our conditioned state, it's important to accept that we are attached to results. We are attached to results. I mean, otherwise we're going to end up blaming ourselves for being attached to results. And then blaming ourselves just ends up to, an unnecessary emotion of being guilty for whatever we think we're attached to. So if we accept, as Ekavira said, awareness is important, and then accept, yeah, I'm attached to results. I'm in a conditioned state. Yes, but is that my true conditioned state? Is this my real self? Is this my real self? And when we look at it, we can be gentle with ourselves, but be compassionate with ourselves and understand I'm in this process. I'm so very fortunate that I am getting a chance. I'm getting an opportunity to offer the results to Krishna. And I'm learning how to do that. Krishna is so gently and so sweetly arranging all kinds of association. I'm being guided and nurtured by Srila Prabhupada how to offer the results to Krishna. And that takes time for us to develop. It's not, if we were very clear about not doing things for the results, we would be fully Krishna conscious. Yeah. We would just be doing it fully for Krishna. You know what I mean? We would be like Jatayu, totally, absolutely. And that's why I said that prayer of Rupa Goswami is so important. And I have a little bit of a part of it that says, I do not have praying or the practices of hearing and chanting in bhakti. I have no practice of meditation on the Lord, or nor do I have practices of Gyan or Varnashram Dharma. I don't even have that, right? We could put attachment to the results in Varnashram Dharma and it would be totally okay. However, he's saying, I don't even have that. I don't even have any understanding of that. And I do not even have good birth to execute these processes properly. Not even good birth. But since you are merciful to the least qualified, oh dear Lord, though I have impure desires, my aspirations for you continues to agitate me. So that's the thing. As long as we're aspiring for Krishna, then ultimately our desires for results will be transformed. That's a given. It's a given. And we can't hide in the closet and say and think, or we can't think we're so elevated that we don't have attachment to results. And we can't hide in the closet with our desires for material results. We got to face it, and we got to pray and know, okay, Krishna, as long as I keep in this process, you're gonna show me how I'm transforming it. And I know for you that just by your service of doing the kirtan with the devotees, of bringing the holy names in New York City, and by engaging, just to engage devotees, it's like, it's a tremendous undertaking. It's a tremendous undertaking just to engage devotees. What to speak of engaging them and chanting the holy names of the Lord on the streets of New York. Just by you doing that whatever, if there's any tinge of desire for results, Krishna, he will intervene. The Supreme Lord intervenes. Lord Ram intervenes, and he makes sure. And I'm talking too much, and Ekavira Prabhu, you back. I want to put you back on your point.
Yeah, actually, thank you, Vraja Lila, because her speaking helped me to recall, because I couldn't find it on my notes, but it helped me to recall that, because I combined it a little bit. The second step is actually an anchor thought, and that's from a material perspective. But what is our anchor thought in endeavoring to actually serve the Lord? We understand that our anchor, or our connection, is our understanding that which we do is for the pleasure of the Lord. But just by reflecting on, that's the reason why these pastimes are here for us, to actually meditate upon them, to understand that, the endeavor is what Krishna wants. We have the Damodar Lila, where, Mother Yashoda is actually trying so hard to actually tie Damodar up. And every time she takes the rope and wraps his belly, she's 2 fingers too short. And the Vaishnavacharya has expressed to us what do those 2 fingers represent. Represents our endeavor, and then our endeavor and the mercy of Krishna, the mercy of the Lord, in desiring to be tied. And so it's a mercy of the Lord. That mercy of the Lord is the result. That's all up to the Lord. Krishna expresses that I am the ability in the man. I am the ability in the person, man, bird, human being, bird in the case of Jatayu, monkey in the case of Hanuman.
Sugriva, he befriended, Bali he killed. You know what I mean? He's ever active.
So our success is actually just in the endeavor, not the results. And as Vraja Lila expressed, that it's if we acted upon on that platform, we'd be pure devotees. But it's important for us to take baby steps and to understand that just by thinking about making the endeavor is a step in the right direction. And then by endeavoring, we continue each and every time we endeavor, and at some point in time, we strengthen our devotional muscle, as it's expressed.
And just, Prabhupada says, we are actually pure devotees. We're just in forgetfulness of that. So it's in our remembrance, right? As we are remembering. And so in our state of forgetfulness, we think we're attached to results. In our real self of who we really are, we're not attached to results. We're attached to Krishna. The Tagora, Hari Hari.
Oh, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I'm just so happy to see you, and I just always feel so much love,
warm, embracing smile.
Yeah, so much love, always. I still think of you, when I think of you, that the name that comes to me is Spring, for some reason, because when I thought, because that name for me is like so real. It's like she's like, bringing you, this warmth and this beauty and this life and this, and fresh air and involvement and becoming evolve. And so I just love you. Thank you. We both do, by the way.
Thank you.
Jamuna Jaya.
Well, I just wanted to pop on quickly. First of all, let me jump on and also share praises for Brajarani because she just is everything. She is just, as they say, all that and the bag of chips. So I'm just going to hop on that train while I'm here. But it's always wonderful for your classes. But I just want to share. I love Jatayu and his tales so much that I have a habit of naming things. So my harmonium's name is Jatayu.
Wow.
And so I just wanted to share that because you were singing his glory so much. And I named my harmonium Jatayu because I love that pastime. And I particularly love that you brought up one of my favorite Gita verses about saving from the worst kind of fear. The Krishna saves us from the worst kind of fear. And it's the fear of being separated, that we're alone, that we're on this on our own. But Krishna saves us from that because he's always right here. So thank you so much for bringing up two of my favorite things today in class.
Thank you, Jamuna Jaya.
Thank
You
you.
know, Jamuna Jaya, just by hearing you say that you name your harmonium Jatayu, to me, that's like such a prescription for not being attached to results. How can you play your harmonium thinking of Jatayu and be attached to results, right? It's just, it don't go together. It's like Rasabas. So for me, that's like such a practical tool that you have implemented in your life. And I just want to share with you how I look in the Bhakti Center, usually to see what's going on all the time. I'm sure so many of us do. And I'm just so inspired by your yoga classes. Thank you so very much. You're just like such an amazing yoga teacher. So you have so many beautiful gifts. Thanks, Jamuna.
Thank you.
Jamuna Jaya.
Haribol.
Hari Haribol. Haribol. Okay, my love. Brajarani, this devotee,
That's it.
I don't know where she went. Maybe she went to do darshan. Does anybody else have any comments? Oh, here she is. Haribol.
I can show you quick darshan. I know Rajlila Devi wanted to.
Yes, for the Muralidhar. Haribol.
Haribol.
Thank you so much, Rajlila Devi and Ekavira Prabhu. Thank you for this wonderful class this morning. We're so blessed to have you today. Thank you all the devotees for joining us. Hope to see you all again tomorrow. Thank you so much.